Hello there. I'm Robert Marks, and this is the Mercury Legal Sidebar. Today, I'm going to be discussing the AI Spotify $10 million fraud case that you probably heard about, or at least saw the headlines earlier in the month. Here are the facts. On September 4th, the FBI arrested a North Carolina musician with wire fraud conspiracy, and money laundering conspiracy, alleging that he defrauded various streaming services of over $10 million. It should be noted that he's facing 20 years in prison for each charge. He allegedly used AI to create hundreds of thousands of songs, uploaded them, and then used bots to stream these songs and collect the royalties from the various platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. Spotify has actually responded to this and claiming that they have a very advanced fraud detection in place, that they first detected suspicious activity in 2019, and they only paid out about $60,000 of this alleged $10 million. So that should be noted that that's only 1% of the $10 million. And Spotify takes up roughly 50% of the streaming market share. So it is highlighting that Spotify does have a very adequate, a very robust fraud detection system in place. So that's probably a discussion that the other services need to have. The broad implications of this are fascinating, at least to me as an attorney. First off, this is the first criminal case involving using AI to artificially inflate streaming of AI-generated music. That's cool. And it's highlighting the growing sophistication in criminal activity. You know, with generative AI, it has been extremely helpful to us in our everyday lives. I'm sure everyone's used it one way or another and can see the benefit. And we have to remember that it's not just us using it, but nefarious actors as well. And you have to be cautious. Businesses have to be prepared for these bad actors to take advantage of these new tools. It is showing that Spotify is making a better effort than the other services, at least based on Spotify's response. It also brings up an interesting point of, first off, how are royalties even determined for streaming? I mean, everyone has Spotify or Apple Music or whatnot, YouTube Music on their phone and listens to music. And they understand the basic concept that some form of money is paid. But what is that rate? Who is paid? And then also AI and copyright law. How does that work? Was this man, when he created these hundreds of thousands of songs with AI, was that an original work? Could he have copyrighted that work? And what are the implications going forward as it relates to copyright law? Shall we begin? Music streaming royalties is a very complex system. I mean, copyright law is a very complex system. And so you can imagine a revenue agreement that deals with the intricacies of copyright law will be complex. But basically, to have context and understanding to this case, there are two types of music copyright that royalties generated from music streaming are paid out to. That is the recording copyright royalty and songwriting or publishing copyright royalties. The difference between the two is pretty simple. Recording copyright royalties are paid out to the rights holder of the actual sound recording, the master recording. And this is typically the artist or the record label. And then songwriting or publishing copyright royalties are paid out to the songwriters, publishers who own the composition rights. You know, we can get into the weeds on, you know, mechanical royalties, performance royalties, and all that. But for the context of this case, when a royalty is earned based on streaming a song on a streaming platform, the individuals entitled to that are the master rights holder, songwriter, and publisher. And they're all entitled to their share of the royalties. So the next question is, how are these royalties calculated? For the most part, these services use a pro rata model in calculating royalties, which means they take all of the revenue that they're receiving from subscriptions, ads, and pool it together. And then that total number of streams across the platform is calculated, and revenue is then distributed proportionately based on each artist's share of the total stream. So there is a revenue pool, a cap, and then doesn't matter how much something is streamed, it is taken from that same pool. Well, it does matter in the determination of their share of the pool, but what I'm meaning is there's a set pool. So for example, a artist, if they have a big hit song and they're entitled to, they stream 1% of all total streams, they would receive 1% of the revenue pool. So for illustrative purposes, say you have a 1 million streams of a song. What are you earning? Well, it's different for every platform. There's no fixed per stream rate, but there are estimates from anywhere from 0.003 cents, so not 3 cents, 0.3 of a cent, to 0.005 for Spotify. Apple pays a little more. And in fact, they actually incentivize their artists to use spatial audio tracks, and they will pay 10% more. Sidebar of the sidebar. But Apple clearly has a goal, a vision with their Apple Vision Pro to have some form of augmented reality in their future. And part of that is spatial video, pictures, and audio, which gives you the illusion of you're not listening to music, but you're actually there where the music was performed originally. And so it's kind of a smart take because they need content to incentivize artists to record in spatial audio and then upload in spatial audio. I don't know if it's working, but I just thought that was interesting. And then Spotify actually has a restriction on you have to have 1,000 streams in 12 months before you can generate royalties, which makes sense. And then also explains this man's conduct in this present case. But anyway, back to the illustration of artist 1 million streams. How much are they getting? On average, between $3,000 and $5,000. So not a lot of money. Maybe most people don't know, but streaming does not earn that much money unless you are insanely popular or you have a very hit song. It is a hard way to make money. You have to have supplemental income as an artist, whether it be touring or merch, whatnot. All of this being said, it provides context as to why this North Carolina musician did what he did. He found a way to game the system with generative AI to his detriment in the long run. But for a brief moment, he was like Icarus with his waxed wings, and he flew too close to the sun. So now, with all this context of the case and how royalties work, let's talk a little bit about AI content, and how it relates to intellectual property or copyright law. Currently, there is no copyright protection for works created by non-humans, including machines. So the product of generative AI cannot be copyrighted. And this isn't a new position. There's a very famous copyright dispute involving a photographer and a monkey. PETA actually came in there too, ironically enough, where a monkey stole a photographer's camera and took a selfie. And the photographer later tried to claim a copyright on the picture, arguing that he had a valid claim because he engineered the situation that resulted in the picture. And I think that argument actually sounds really familiar. And if someone was trying to make a claim against work created by generative AI, I think they would argue very similarly. It should be noted that this monkey selfie is in the public domain because the Copyright Office has ruled that animals can't hold copyright. And since the issue of whether his creative control over the picture was never judicially argued, as it stands right now, he was not entitled to the copyright, and it's in the public domain, which the photographer was able then to use that photo in a book and make money off it. So just because he doesn't own the copyright, it doesn't preclude an individual from using content in the public domain to make money. I just need to highlight that. And I think it's a good, fair point to talk about the North Carolina musician when he was creating all of these artificial songs through AI. He wasn't breaking the law. He can use it. He can't enforce a copyright against it to stop, say, someone else from also using those songs. But there's nothing wrong with that. Now, when he uploaded them to Spotify through, hundreds of different non-existent bands, well, that's when we're getting into fraud. And then when you start actually using bots to stream it and steal money, that's actual fraud. But it shows there is some intricacies there that I thought were interesting. But anyway, the copyright is held by the creator. And a non-human creator, whether it be an animal or a machine, is not a legal person and cannot hold a copyright. So any generative AI, as of right now, the default would be that it goes into the public domain. In September of 2022, the U.S. Copyright Office did make history by temporarily granting a registration of a work that was produced with the help of the text-to-image generator Midjourney. It was a graphic novel called Zara of the Dawn. And for a few months, it had a copyright on it. However, the office did reconsider its decision and wound up partially canceling the work's copyright registration due to the non-human authorship. It just shows that, in 2022, generative AI we were still coming to terms with it and what it can do. So it kind of makes sense that maybe they were a little quick to grant. The U.S. Copyright Office does provide guidance on copyright protection concerning AI-generated works. They're not saying that a creator cannot use AI in their process, but what they're very clear on, what they emphasize, is that copyright only protects human authorship, meaning creative works generated by AI without human involvement cannot be copyrighted. But a human can use AI as a tool in the creative process, and that human contribution may qualify for copyright protection. If a work's traditional elements of authorship were produced by a machine and lacks any human authorship, then the office will not approve that. So if a human solely creates a prompt for an AI and generates a written, visual, musical work, that is outside of the traditional elements of authorship, and it would not be granted a copyright. However, for example, an illustration that they give is a human may select or arrange AI-generated material in a sufficiently creative way that is resulting in the work as a whole constitutes the original work of authorship. I think what makes this case so interesting, other than the fact that it's the first criminal case dealing with artificial inflating AI music, is to highlight how generative AI has changed the landscape. And that's in every industry and in every walk of life, with every person it has touched. And criminality is no different. The fact that some musician in North Carolina thought to do this, it shouldn't be surprising to any of us. And it shows that businesses, individuals, whether you're creative or not, you need to be aware of this and be prepared. I'm a strong proponent in intellectual property. And I think that AI as a tool should be used and should be allowed to be used in order to create original works. And that's the way it's going. We're just having a little growing pains. And obviously, anytime that there's a nefarious actor, it potentially will delay the inevitable. But with any sort of advancement in technology, there's always going to be naysayers. There's always going to be doom makers, and it's just a matter of educating yourself and embracing the new technology, understanding how it can help you in your everyday life. And here's hoping that my profession, the law itself, takes that advice and adapts a little quicker. California just recently, the governor of California, recently vetoed the first AI safety bill in the nation. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of why it was vetoed or the content of the bill or anything, but it just shows that I appreciate the effort. I do think that there needs to be regulation in this space. I do think there needs to be understanding in this space. Hopefully, the ones that make our laws, that interpret our laws, that write the rules, write the regulations, that enforces the rules and regulation, that interprets the rules and regulations, have a basic understanding of how generative AI works. At least I know you do now as it relates to this specific case. Thank you. I appreciate your time.